Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. Joining me from Saturday Down South, the Chicago Bears man himself, Ethan Stone, or Calvin Johnson, I think is like the assistant wide receiver coach now for the Chicago Bears, which is really weird and feels insane that Detroit Lions legend is going to be on the Bears coaching staff.
I actually didn't know that. You're breaking this news to me right now as we speak. Yeah. I didn't know that. Wow.
Hey. Like, no one's in the coaching slop and memorizing this stuff. I kid you not. Last night I'm waiting in line, Ethan Stone, at Popeyes to get a late dinner. And you know what I'm doing? I'm memorizing the NFL, the new coaching staffs and the personnel on Wikipedia that constantly updates. So I'm going through it, and I see Calvin Johnson. That's the reason I know. That's for the real ones out here who want to memorize stuff and really live and breathe the name of the sports renaissance man. That's what you got to do. You gotta find your moments. And while you're waiting in line for some spicy chicken, that was the time for me to be like, oh, I didn't realize so and so is the inside linebackers coach for the Dolphins. Good to know. There you go. That's what you do. Built different. How are you, Ethan?
I'm doing great. There's good college basketball on tonight, so I'm ready to watch some of that and talk some Tennessee basketball as well.
There you go. Also here, a Rocky Top insider, Ryan Schumpert, who's excited to do an hour and a half on Tennessee, a Tennessee hour and a half baseball preview, because it's something that he's been dying to do today, and it's something he hasn't done yet. So I hope he's up for it. Ryan Schumpert, are you ready to do a deep dive here?
Yeah, I can just repeat all my talking points from earlier this morning. So that sounds good to me.
In all seriousness, it's a great pod with Jack and Ryan that you can listen on Rocky Top Insider, because I listened to that as I was working today on all things Tennessee baseball. So you can check that out on their YouTube channel and on the Rocky Top Insider Press Pass as well. Vols, Florida. As we all expected, Tennessee blew out the Florida Gators on Saturday without Zakai Zeigler and Igor Milicic Jr. The most important point for you coming out of this victory for the Vols was what, Ethan?
I could not have been more impressed with Jordan Gainey as the point guard in this game. Jemai Mashak helped out a little bit as well. I believe he had 5 assists, which honestly I didn't know he was moving like that after the game. But I feel like I didn't know that, especially because Gainey was doing so well in his role. And not only was he doing so well, he kind of had to for it not to just fall apart. I mean, it's hard to say that when you win by 20 points, but Gainey set the tone from the very beginning, and he made a bit of an impact everywhere. I mean, he had 4 assists, which doesn't sound like much, but for him, that's his season high. He had 3 steals. He turned the ball over just once against a really good Florida defense that turned us over way more last time in a 30-point loss. He wasn't really hitting his threes, but he kept shooting, and he kept leading the team, and he scored when Tennessee needed him to. And you can't say enough good things about Gainey after this. And it has to kind of up your confidence moving forward, knowing that, if whatever happens, Zakai goes down again for 20 minutes for, the rest of the season, no matter really what happens, you got to feel pretty good knowing that Gainey's at the very least going to come in and do a good job. Obviously you don't want that to happen, and it's probably not going to happen, but having that, I guess, losing the word, that safety valve in your back pocket, it's pretty massive knowing he can step up like that.
Well, I think it also maybe makes Barnes think twice about Zakai having to play a whole second half, where it's like maybe it's good to wake these guys up of like, hey, you can't rely on Zakai to do everything. And it's like maybe those moments where it kind of forces them in the deep end a little bit. And I mean, we obviously saw it when Zakai went down the tournament and they had their Sweet 16 run with Jemai running the point, and it was just a very different look, and they had to work a lot harder for it. It's not that they're not working. It's just they had to find different ways to be active, and their roles got expanded just because Zakai, it's easy to take, I imagine as a player, it's easy to take Zakai for granted because he just does so much that you don't even recognize. And it's just, he's moving at 100 miles an hour all the time. And always, like this year in particular, just always looking to find guys open, whether it's the corner, inside, this, that, and the other. Like he's always moving and always looking to make a play that it's easy to get caught standing around and looking and waiting for Zakai to find you. But I do wonder now, because like Barnes plays Zakai so much, the 38 minutes, what if that is something of a takeaway? It's like, hey, I don't have to do that as much, and maybe it's better for the team to give him a little bit more of a break so that they have to, if there is a little bit of a scoring spell or whatever, it's like, hey, let's force these guys to play without Zakai for a little bit and see what that looks like. Because I think Gainey is a different player, especially than he was a year ago. And I think you saw, doesn't mean it's always going to work like it did against Florida, but I do think it might be something that is, like you said, a safety valve. Like, hey, let's try this, and maybe it wakes up these guys of like, hey, you can't just stand around and wait for Zakai to bail you out.
Yeah. I mean, Tennessee is at its best when Zakai's on the floor. I don't really think anyone's debating that. However, I mean, you got to admit, at least you got to think about it. Gainey gives Tennessee something, I feel like, offensively more so than when Zakai is running the show from his perspective. Like Zakai, let's be honest, he's 5'9". He's not shooting well from three this year. He's limited in what he can do near the rim. You're not going to stop him. He's going to keep driving to the rim, and he's so fast he can get to the rim really whenever he wants to. And he's one of the guys that, when things are slog and things are slowing down, he's the guy that is going to drive to the rim. But I feel like Gainey, especially with his mid-range game, he's shooting better from three. He's shown that he can get to the basket as well. And he just has a lot of, I feel like in ways his bag is a little deeper, if that makes sense. I'm not saying I necessarily think that's sustainable for 30 minutes, but exactly what you just said. I mean, dude, let Gainey run the show a little more, just see what happens. And this is kind of switching gears a little bit more, but I would like to see Gainey inserted into some sort of starting offense, like at some point before the tournament, because you see Tennessee getting out to these really slow starts lately, and it ended up well in the end with Florida, and it didn't end up so well against Kentucky and Auburn. But if Tennessee they can put Gainey in there and he's just giving them anything in relation to, I guess, what Mashak is giving them right now, I feel like it'd be worth something. Just like see if it works. See if Gainey. I understand that would kind of put you a little undersized at times, but just see what happens. If he can go out there, maybe that is at the very least a solution to Tennessee's early woes in the first 10 minutes of the game.
And I think you make the argument. Oh, before you jump in here, Ryan, like I would just say to build off what you just said, Ethan, real quick, is I don't have the exact analytics in front of me, but I think Gainey has converted 90% of those curls at the elbow this season. Like I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but I'm just going to go ahead and say, like, I think that's Tennessee's best shot. Like I really do. Like of all the buckets, and all three of us have seen every Tennessee bucket this year. If we had to like just off the top of our head, who's has the best field goal percentage of a certain kind of shot this year, I feel like it's Jordan Gainey in the mid range and coming off those curls right at the elbow or right at the free throw line. Like he is almost automatic. Like that is just when Tennessee is struggling, that has to be the play. It's like do whatever you can to get Jordan Gainey on that little curl because he does not miss, and I think he may have the best touch of anyone on the team right now.
Yeah, and I know Ryan wants to say something also, but I want to interject real fast. He oh my goodness, I'm losing my train of thought. He seems to build more so on when he's hot. Like, I mean, kind of Dalton Connect and early season Chaz Lanier-esque. Definitely not to that level of the guys that I said, but he plays, and I know everyone does when like, shooters touch. He plays so well when he sees a bucket go in. That's kind of why it backs up my earlier point of see what happens when you put him into the game earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Ryan.
I agree with that for sure, Ethan, on the starting lineup spot. Specifically, I would like Gainey in there over Mashak because of some of these slow starts, not just to the start of games, but to the start of halves. You've seen that hurt them multiple times where they come out in the second half and start slow. And to your last point, Ethan, I would love to see the numbers on Jordan Gainey's first shot of the game. I feel like it's typically a three when he comes in, and I feel like he's not shooting very well on it. So to try to get him more involved in a curl, hit a shot early, try to build some rhythm that way, I think is smart. And kind of going back to the original part of the conversation, like I'm skeptical that they change anything. I think in a lot of ways this was a one-game thing. And we saw Jordan Gainey do it at Illinois too really well when both Chaz and Zakai were out for foul trouble in a lot of that game. And we obviously saw it go very, very poor at Vanderbilt when they asked him to do that. What I thought Tennessee did really well in this game, and what I would like to see them do more of, is I thought they did a great job of having, all right, and they didn't do this at Vanderbilt. I thought this was a big problem at Vanderbilt. They did a good job of being like, all right, Gainey, you're playing point. We need you to get the ball up the court and beat the pressure. And then we're giving the ball to Meshack, or we're giving the ball to Bishop Boswell, and then we're going to run you and Chaz off screens. We're going to play you in a spot. We need you to create more offense. And Gainey's skill set's not really built to do that a ton from the point guard spot. So they put him and Chaz on the two wings and had him run off a bunch of screens. And I think when you have two shooters like that, it makes it harder to defend. You can't just play so strong on Chaz and put so much emphasis on Chaz when, like you can now, if it's a two-guy action and Jemai is the other one, because you're just not really worried that much about Jemai. So I'd like to see more of that. I'd like to see more Chaz, Gainey, Zakai on the court together, and I'd like to see, when they are, less dependence on Zakai and ball screen actions, especially early in shot clock, and more trying to get those guys running off floppy actions, running off ball screens, trying to hit curls, trying to hit fades in the corner and hit corner threes. Like, I would like to see a lot more of that, which is really what I thought we saw, in a large part because they were forced to play so many minutes together, Gainey and Chaz. But I think you saw that more in the Florida game than we've seen most of the season.
I like it. Sneaky stat that stood out to you from the game, Ryan?
Tennessee 7 turnovers. Don't know this off the top of my head. I think it was the season low. I don't buy into, any part of, and not that anybody here saying it, like, this team's better offensively without Zakai, or like, wow, you won without Zakai. Like, he's not that important. Like, I don't really buy any of that. I think you see it all the time, these one-game bumps without a key player. We saw it when Zakai went down 2 years ago. He got hurt, 90 seconds into the Arkansas game, and that game was one of the best games Tennessee played all season at a point in the year when they were not playing very well. We saw it on Tuesday night with Lamont Butler when he's out of the game, and Kentucky's offense looked really good without him. But I did think that part was notable for them to have a season low. Like, I think it was a season low, or at least right around a season low in turnovers without Zakai. That's one that kind of left me, scratching my head, or like a moment. And some of it might be, Zakai just forces more stuff. Some of it being because he's forced to, and I think that kind of goes back into the point I was making a minute ago, where I'd like to see more off-ball stuff and less dependent on Zakai and ball screens, where it seems like that forces him a lot of times it makes him force stuff, and obviously that can lead to turnovers too. But that part I thought was really interesting, and a stat in that game that was a big part of why Tennessee was able to win without a great shooting performance, and also one that leaves me kind of a monitoring type situation. I'm curious as to what that really tells us, or what that really means.
And I think we can't really. One of the other parts of the Zakai absence, Ethan, is like, I think there was so much, and we talked about it, where I don't think Zakai's a good shooter, and I think that's okay. I think he's like a below average shooter, who I weirdly trust in clutch moments. Like, I think he's one of my guys I actually want shooting it with the game on the line, but I also just don't. It's the Trae Young thing, where Trae Young at a certain point, we have enough data, we have enough shots, that it's like he's not a good shooter. Like, it's okay. It doesn't mean he's a bad shooter. It means he's not a good one. Like, I think Jordan Gainey is a good shooter for Tennessee. I think Chaz Lanier is a great shooter. I don't think Zakai is a good one. He's a high volume guy, and they're not bad shots. I'd rather him jack up a lot of open threes that aren't connecting all that often than a bunch of mid-range twos that aren't connecting. All that. I mean, there's the shot diet for Tennessee is weird at times. I mean, Jemai will do a post up every now and then, or Jemai will take a mid range that because teams are giving him that, and you're like, no. Like, that's, if you're gonna go that far, just keep going, just keep driving.
Post up, I don't mind for Jemai. The post up when he gets to the middle of the court and turns left shoulder.
Well, he does a hook shot sometimes. It's the hook shot sometimes, and it's like, no. Just go up. I don't know. If it's a smaller guy, I just go in and just dunk. Jemai, just dunk. There was a couple of.
You're asking him to do something that he's never.
But why?
Done in games. So what are we? You're asking.
You're at practice, by the way, Ryan. Is he dunking in practice in these situations? Have you ever?
No, he's not. No, he's
Why?
not. Some of this is accurate, but you're also talking about it in a situation when he's like you're asking him to dunk with a guy like on his side.
Oh, no, I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about like I'm
dunk.
talking about when he gets an open space or it's transition, whatever, and he's not going up for a dunk. Like, it just will never not baffle me because it will end up in a turnover way too many times, and you're like, this can't be a turnover. Yeah. Either you get fouled or you dunk on this person. Like that, it can't be a turnover. It bounces off your leg, or it just you just go up and you just have, like no, that just can't because you're just too athletic and you're too big. And you could do it like Jemai. The Jemai not dunking or getting fouled inside, and just it will blow my mind until the end of time. It will never make any sense. Just like Santi the Santi shooting woes and just kind of like where he was in clutch free throws will never make sense because he was so good all the other time. It was just weird, just like some weird basketball blocks. But I mean, Ethan, did you see anything different in Tennessee's offensive shot diet without Zakai? Because we're talking about like what Gainey did and what the guys did in his absence, but what did you see that was different in terms of what Tennessee was shooting without Zakai being there to facilitate?
Yeah, that's an interesting question too, because I mean you have to think Igor Milicic too, who has been as of late shooting considerably better from three. Yeah, not having him either was pretty. I don't even think we've mentioned him. Because of how important Zakai is, obviously he should be the headline there. As far as noticing something different, I think what Ryan said earlier is very interesting. It seemed like Gainey was more active in a lot of ways. I liked the 2-man game between Gainey and Cade Phillips specifically. I thought they did, especially in the second half. I think they had a couple plays where they connected really well. I'd like to see a lot more stuff like that. And otherwise it was just like confidence, I think, more than anything. Like you could tell that without Zakai on the floor, without Igor on the floor, they knew they're like, there's no one coming to save us. And I think that more than anything, more so than the type of shots they were taking, is what was specifically important. At least that's what I took from it. Is they know they're like Zakai's not going to be able to drive it. Like we have to fix this now. We can't just have plays expiring and us running around and have Zakai just drive to the rim because he's the fastest player on the court and save us. But we don't have that guy. And I feel like that especially helps for Jordan, even though you said kind of go outside of that. But otherwise, I really think it's just the confidence. That's where the biggest part of it came from. I didn't notice too much otherwise.
One thing I would add too, just to put some breaks, I guess, on this entire conversation is it's not like Tennessee's offense was great in this game.
No.
Their offense was worse than their season average still. A little bit better than their SEC average to this point in the season. Tennessee won the game handedly because their defense was incredible. And it's just like, all right, the offense was able to be decent, which was, we're talking about it because they did some different things and there was no certainty that the offense was going to be decent without Zakai and Igor Milicic. But it's not like they just like reinvented something or you felt like they really found anything huge in this game. It was more their ability to stay afloat that was important.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. Stock report. Which Vols are trending up and down coming out of this game, Ryan Schumpert?
I don't really think anybody, I would say, is trending down. Gainey,
someone else who I think might be trending down?
Sure.
I think D-Stone's trending down.
Yeah, that was
not a good has to hurt you.
I don't like saying that, but that was a bad D-Stone game, and that was a humongous opportunity for D-Stone.
Massive opportunity for. I thought the exact same thing, Chase. I think you're.
I don't think it was a bad D-Stone game because I thought he did some other things pretty well on the court besides offense. Besides scoring, he certainly shot the ball really poorly. But I mean, I don't know. Like that wasn't that surprising to me. You're right. It was an opportunity because he's going to be able to get a lot of shots if he hits some shots. But I mean, in the sense of what's kept D-Stone from playing, like the things that have kept D-Stone from playing, I thought he did solid in this game. You are probably right. If it's anyone, it probably is D-Stone. But I didn't leave that game thinking, oh man, disappointing performance from D-Stone. Like, yeah, he didn't shoot.
I think it's disappointing. I think you could say it's fair to say it was a disappointing offensive game. Like, because that was a huge opportunity for him offensive, and he got a lot of good looks. Like that's the other thing is like D-Stone was getting good looks, and you were just kind of like with no Igor. He was going to be able to, because of how thin Tennessee was with 7 scholarship guys. Like D-Stone was gonna, like Rick was gonna have to play D-Stone through some errors that he makes. And I just thought this was a potential, like, earn some trust here and earn some consistent minutes, from Barnes, depending on how he played. But to your point, I think that's good that he cleaned up the stuff that traditionally, like, that's frustrated the Tennessee staff. But it's just the offensive stuff where you're like, I think we're all just rooting for him to, like, break through, because you just know the shooting can be there. And this was a game that I just thought, oh man, I really wanted D-Stone to have a great offensive showing, but it didn't matter. He still won by 20. It's more just personal rooting for D-Stone.
I still think I agree with Chase on the offensive part of this, but I mean, I have to admit, I'll say it. He had 5 rebounds, he had 3 assists, no turnovers. I think a block.
One of blocks was one of the biggest plays in the game. He blocks it, and Cade Phillips blocks it, and you take the lead and never look back there late in the first half.
He definitely, the little stuff. I mean, he didn't lose Tennessee the game by any means, and that, like, having 6 or 7 players actually playing, if one of them's really bad, then that's a problem. And I don't think anybody, including D-Stone, even though he didn't have his best to his potential, I guess, and he didn't help himself any. I would agree that he didn't have a bad game looking at it. I still would say if you had to pick someone, he's the one that's trending down, because that's what I was going to say. It's just such a massive opportunity for you to come in and say, like, hindsight's 2020. You come into the game, you say Zakai's not going to be there to score for us. Igor's not going to be there to score for us down low, or grab any rebounds, or be the guy that's shooting the threes as of late, as he was. D-Stone would be just perfect to drop 20 points in this game and carry us. Tennessee was able to win in different ways. They didn't need him, which I feel like is big, but for him specifically, his individual performance, I feel like he himself is probably kicking himself a little bit.
Before we talk Mizzou real quick for this Wednesday night game for Tennessee, I think the other interesting part of this conversation here is we're almost 22 minutes in and we haven't mentioned Chaz Lanier once.
Like, about to say him for my trending up.
I mean, isn't that crazy though? Like, trending up, but like he's not it's just weird. It's just weird that Tennessee just had their biggest win, I think, of conference play. And Chaz Lanier had a fine game, and like, you're gonna shed some light on what that was like, Ryan. But I do think it's just kind of indicative of how weird of a season Tennessee's having, is that Chaz Lanier doesn't come up for 22 minutes at this point on a podcast, because you're like, there's just so many other things going on with this team right now that I think is far more interesting. And you're just kind of like, he's floating in that. He's there. Like, it's just like your big prize, like transfer portal edition. You're like, yeah, he's fine. Like, he's just floating on the periphery. That's kind of how the game goes. It's like he's just floating down the side, and then he might get hot and hit a couple threes, and you're like, oh yeah, Chaz Lanier, thanks. And it's just, I don't know, it's just weird. That's where we're at with Chaz in early February, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of that's fair. Because, I mean, it's just what we've been saying. He doesn't do much to impact the game if he's not hitting shots. To that note, do we have any guesses? How many assists does Chaz Lanier have in SEC play?
It has to be sub 5.
I was going to say 7.
I'll say
Grant
4.
Williams.
Oh!
2.
Yeah. I was being generous.
Goodness.
Yeah,
2?
I mean, that part's crazy.
I mean, he's playing a bunch of minutes. That's the other part. It's like, you have to, like, try. Like, that's one of those where you're like, how, by just accident, are you not getting a couple, like, one a game? Like, even in these big wins, like,
that's the one that, the thing that kills me, that I feel like I see it all the time, where he comes off a screen, especially if he curls off a screen, and whoever's guarding him is, running behind him, and the big man who sets the screen, that defender, is hedging up hard, trying to take away a shot, and the curl guy on the screener is just there all the time, and it feels like he never sees him. So that's negative Chaz talk, and kind of to your point, Chase. At the same time, like, I think we're kind of underselling his impact on this game. Like, he is the shooter on this Tennessee team roster that doesn't have a ton of dudes shooting great right now. If he does not take a 3-pointer in this game, you take away his 3-point attempts, Tennessee would have been 1 of 13 from 3, and they would have been whole lot easier to guard. And offense that we're talking about, of like, all right, you hung in there, and Jordan Gainey, we're praising Jordan Gainey as we should have. He did great. without Chaz making shots, it probably looks a whole lot worse. So,
Yeah.
yes, I think like your floating around aspect, like into a degree, is right, just because he doesn't do a ton to impact the game. But I think those shots that he did hit on Saturday, and when he is hitting some shots, is just incredibly, incredibly valuable for this team and this offense. That I think it's unfair to undersell that and act like that wasn't a huge aspect of the game.
That's fair. I like that, and I mean, it's just he needs them. It's just I think that's just going to be the thing, right? Is like you're gonna have 16 minutes where you're like, what is he on the floor? And then you're going to have 4 where like Tennessee really needed those 4 from Chaz. Like Tennessee really needed those shots to go in from Chaz, and that like he's taking the right shots that Tennessee needs for the most part, but I just think it's kind of like he's solid. Like he's solid, and Tennessee's going to need him come tournament. And that's the other thing too. I've been thinking about. I don't know if y'all agree with this, but like I think Chaz is going to benefit from the tournament more, like the NCAA tournament more than SEC play, where I think there's bounce back potential where like just the way SEC teams defend him and depending on what kind of bracket, and obviously the draw matters, but I could see Chaz Lanier having a really surprising for a lot of folks start to the tournament when we get there, because I think Chaz could feast on Tennessee. I mean, they're back in the 1 seed conversation when you look at Lenardi and stuff. Like they're a 1-2 seed. Like they're gonna play they're gonna have some favorable matchups early on, at least the first weekend and stuff. And I think Chaz is someone who benefits more from just the NCAA tournament and the kind of guys who are gonna end up defending him, and just that kind of physical play that's kind of been tough for him in conference play. I think he's gonna mostly avoid that in the NCAA tournament. He's like someone I'm just like buying stock on for the tourney. That's the thing I'm thinking of. Is that crazy to just pencil in that? Like I think there's a bump potential for Lanier come tournament time just by nature of the play style.
I don't think that's crazy. I wouldn't say just hearing that take I have any sort of huge reaction or feel to it. What I think does go to your point a minute ago is like your 16-minute, 4-minute things. Like, he's Tennessee's best offensive guy. So ideally, you want him to get going. And it's like, all right, emphasis on him early, especially as Tennessee has these slow starts. But I just think a skill set. It's like when all these teams come out and are locked into their defensive game plan, which is always to take Chaz away. It's like he's just not going to get a ton of open shots, and he can't really create them. So it makes it like he needs to be in the flow of the game, and you get out in transition a couple times, and some teams lose concentration and they lose the scouting report, and then Chaz gets open. That's like kind of where he can pop off and go on some flurries and hit some big shots. And that's, obviously really valuable. But to your point, Chase, that can be frustrating when it's a guy that Tennessee is really relying upon to score and kind of carry the offensive load game in, game out.
Ethan Stone, is the Mizzou matchup on Wednesday night a good matchup or bad matchup for Tennessee?
I think because it's at home, it's probably not a bad matchup. It's kind of a hard one to read because Missouri's losses this year have been just like there's like no trend to it whatsoever. They're such a weird team to follow. Their offense is really good. They've been considerably better since Caleb Grill got healthy. That's really when they started taking off. I think he had a bit of a rough game against Auburn. I think all of them had a bit of a rough game against Auburn. That was 8 games ago. And since then, I mean, he's been seriously their best player. He's one of the best 3-point shooters in the nation. I think that matchup, him and Jemai, is going to be one of them to watch. Another one I'm looking at that Tennessee should have a clear advantage in, especially being at home, is rebounding. They could own the boards in this game. Missouri's kind of struggled with it. Part of that is because they're so good on offense that there's just not many opportunities to grab off on offensive boards. They've been really, really efficient. I believe they're the most efficient team Tennessee's going to have played on offense so far. I'm not positive about that. It might be Florida. Either way, this is a top 10 offense per Ken Palm in the nation, and probably a top 25 altogether. They do so many things really well. They don't shoot the 3 that well, and Tennessee is very good at guarding the 3. Their thing is they're going to get to the free throw line. That's their main thing. I saw a stat. I don't remember exactly what it is, but I do know Missouri has shot 175 more free throws than Tennessee has this season, which is just a shocking number.
Wow.
Like, it's completely ridiculous. It's like they're upper 500s, like 570 something, and Tennessee's sitting in like the low 400s, like 405, something around that range. That's their path is win the physicality battle and grab more rebounds than they're expected to. But I mean, on paper, Tennessee should have the advantage in the rebounding, and that's just compounded when you consider the fact that this is at the Food City Center and that Missouri really hasn't played too well on the road. They have one road win against Florida, but otherwise they've kind of struggled. Just beat Mississippi State, I guess. So that's not nothing, but they have not played as well as they have at home. So I think Tennessee is probably going to be the favorite by a fair. I think Ken Palm has them by like 10 points. But it could. I mean, if they hit their shots, it'll be tough for sure because they can dance with anybody in the nation.
Do you agree, Ryan?
Yeah, largely. I mean, I think there's elements of both. The rebounding one, which Ethan outlined, is a big advantage to Tennessee. I kind of see the makeup for Missouri being somewhat similar to Kentucky, which obviously is
concerning.
You see the path. You see the path to it being a bad matchup because in SEC play. So this is, I think they've played 8 SEC games to this point. 8 SEC games to this point. Their percentage, and this is the 16 teams in the conference. Point distribution. First in 3-point shooting, second in free throws, and 16th in 2-point. So I don't think they're going to try to go inside a lot, which you feel really good about Tennessee's interior defense. So like you almost rather see a team that's going to challenge that some. And it's the sense that they're really balanced. Like they have a bunch of different guys that shoot the ball well from the perimeter. They don't have like one go-to guy offensively. Their offensive usage rates are very, very evenly dispersed, which to me, that reminds me a lot of Kentucky. And where it becomes a hard guard in the sense you have to have everybody locked in. It's not like a game where it will say Zakai goes for theoretically Zakai goes and Jemai goes. It's like, all right, you're playing Alabama or something with 2 really good guards and you got those 2 guys to be locked in and kind of take it out of it. And if the other guys don't have a great game defensively, it's probably not going to kill you. To me, like Kentucky, this is one that really could hurt you if not everybody's locked in. So that was obviously a huge plus of what Tennessee did against Florida. I think they need to do it again because if not, I mean, and Missouri hits some shots, like they're going to be able to score enough to make this game very competitive and certainly not make it an easy game.
I love it. Big one too. Tennessee's got it. They're back in the 1 seed conversation. This is just you look at the rest of the schedule. I mean, Bama, I think they're going to play well. Like they play Bama well. Barnes plays Oates well. And it's not like I'm guaranteeing a win over Alabama, but I think that one I feel pretty good about. And he's not getting swept by Kentucky. So I think they're going into Lexington, getting a dub. You look at the schedule. I mean, we said coming into to conference play, like you had 5 losses to play with, I think, to feel like to lock in a 1. Like if you have 5 losses leaving conference play, you're a 1 seed in this conference. I mean, I'm looking at the schedule here, and I mean, there's
a crazy business from you.
What?
Just
there. You look at
insanity.
The schedule at LSU. Okay, look, they're gonna so if they beat Mizzou, they go to Oklahoma, should win that game. To Kentucky, should win that game. Vanderbilt at home, they're not getting swept by Vanderbilt. That's another win. A&M's gonna be tough. That one's 50-50. South Carolina's awful. LSU's awful. You go there. Bama at home, which is a big deal getting them at home. At Ole Miss is another corn. But I mean, there's 2 to 3 losses, I think, left on the calendar. And then 6 losses is kind of where you're at that border of a 1 seed. Tennessee, I think, is actually going to be a border 1 seed team now. Like, they're a 1-2. I think they've calmed the storm, and I think they're going to be okay down the stretch. I think there's a possibility they run the table the rest of the way here, Ryan Schumpert. I think they could go undefeated down the stretch here.
I mean, they have 6 losable games, so I have a hard time thinking they're gonna. Yes,
6.
Missouri, Oklahoma, Kentucky, A&M, Alabama, Ole Miss, all losable games.
Absolutely not. We're not throwing Oklahoma on the road here.
I'm not sure I agree with Oklahoma, but everything else, I mean,
and Kentucky, like they're not getting swept by Kentucky, and they're not getting swept by Vanderbilt. It's not happening. They ate those losses early.
First of all, let's not talk about Vanderbilt at home and Kentucky on the road in the same sentence. Like those are similar games to compare. Because you're right about Vanderbilt. They're not going to lose to Vanderbilt at home. Let me for the Oklahoma.
Well, that was one of your 6. I'm just pointing. I'm picking nits.
No,
here.
Vanderbilt was not one of my 6. Vanderbilt was not one. Of my 6.
Was it not? Oh, sorry.
Kentucky was one of my 6.
Okay.
For all this Oklahoma hate y'all are throwing out there, I'm looking at Ken Palm now, 3 games with a tighter point spread for Tennessee than Oklahoma.
Great. If you lose that game, Season's canceled.
by
I'm out.
4.
You're out of here. Season's over.
This is a Chase Thomas masterclass. Tennessee's been struggling. We've gotten the expectations more tempered to a kind of maybe a more fair spot. They get one big win, and Chase goes, 1 seed's back in play. You got to get the 1 seed. This team's going 7-1. Season's over if you lose a very losable game on Saturday.
Oh no, it's canceled. Like, you lose at Oklahoma on Saturday, season's canceled. Like, that's gonna irritate me more than any other loss this year. Where it's like, you get back in, you beat Mizzou, you beat Florida, and then you drop one at Oklahoma. No, can't do it. Sorry.
I mean,
motion
I think
denied.
Tennessee wins, but acting like that's not possible.
Sorry,
is almost
not
as
possible.
ridiculous as acting like it's a given that Tennessee's going to win at Rupp Arena.
Oh,
The
given.
Kentucky
Let's go
one
ahead.
was an unbelievable take, Jace.
Lock it in.
A&M's also worse than 50-50 in my
Oh,
opinion.
I would say that. I think A&M's the most losable game on their schedule right now.
Yeah.
No, I think
That was not a good experience last time they were in A&M. Was that last year or 2 years ago? It all blends
Last year.
together. Yeah, that was.
Last year.
I hate playing Buzzwood. Like,
It's just the most disgusting brand. Tennessee fans who think what Rick Barnes does is disgusting. I let me make an appointment television for you to sit down for a month and watch every Texas A&M basketball game, and you'll be repulsed. You won't even watch March Madness after having to watch that. It's just Wade Taylor jacking up threes and 3 forwards trying to assault the other team on the glass for 60 minutes. The only thing that makes it decent now is they can't take 40 charges a game and not actually play rim defense and just slide under somebody as they're in midair.
They really do play football. It's
despicable.
Vols football spring depth chart. Now that you've had time to look at it here, Ethan and Ryan, let's start with Ethan here first. What do you think is the biggest hole when you look at this depth chart, projected depth chart in 2025?
Yeah, I'll be 100% honest. I up until probably a week ago, I haven't even thought about Tennessee football.
What a life.
But
I was gonna say, like, I think about it all day, every day. Like, I'm walking around like at Kroger, just being like, what are we doing at receiver? Like, what are we doing?
I will say the first
Who's replacing Mike Eckler?
the first position group that popped to mind when I saw the question, it has to be linebackers. I feel like
Interesting.
I don't know. Man.
This is so great since you weren't on here last week and heard missed Chase's whole thing about the linebackers.
Am I gonna walk into? I don't know. I'm not sure.
Can I calm you, Ethan? Can I calm you on this one?
Maybe you can. Maybe you can. Like, Tennessee just struggled so much. Their linebackers did at the end of the season. They lose 2 of them. I mean, look, I like Arian Carter. I like Thielander. I think the potential is there. As that, you can build on that. It's what spring's for.
You're missing a starter here.
I don't know. I'm not sure it. I don't feel a warm tingle.
Can I spill the beans here?
Yeah, go crazy.
Edwin Spillman that we need to be prepared for. Spillman's a dude. Tennessee is going to have options. Jaden Harmon, 4-star from Georgia. That Christian Gass, 4-star from Georgia. Both guys that.
Chasing eye on a freshman from Georgia.
Hold on, William Inge plays. William Inge, yeah. Look, I understand, Ryan. Thank you for the bet. I got to commit to the bet. Like, this is.
I actually agree. With these two. To your point.
The linebackers are going to be a lot better.
With you on this.
They don't have to worry about. I like Keenan Pili. Keenan Pili was not able to stay healthy the last 2 years. I think they would have been okay if Keenan Pili was able to stay healthy the last 2 years. I think just having the option. This is the deepest linebacking core Tennessee's had in the 5 years of Heupel. Like, there is so much talent in that room that I just have a hard time believing. And William Inge, being one of your best positional coaches, is not going to maximize this group. Like Caleb Perry, like, I think it's going to be the secondary of a season ago, where everyone was like, oh, Caleb Perry's gone. Oh, because you had Elijah Herring the year prior, and you have this year Jalen Smith, and you're like, oh, those are guys who played a lot of snaps. Keenan Pili gone. Like, I'm kind of worried. And then you get out there and you're like, oh, these young guys are different, and they're kind of letting them go because it's like you have some talent that need to play that are in the pipeline that are ready to step in. Edwin Spillman, I think, would have played a bunch last year if he did not get injured and had the wrist thing. Like, you can tell Inge with his comments and how he talks about him. Like, Spillman is a dude, and the way he flies around, I just think he's different. Like, I think he's the most talented Tennessee linebacker they've had in the Heupel era. He's going to be a beast. Aaron Carter in year 3. He's been kind of thrown to the deep end because he's lost Keenan Pili next to him the last 2 years, so he's had to do a lot more as a young player. And I just think having Spillman, Thielander is what he is, but Thielander is good in the box, and I think he's solid. And will be situational. And then you have this collection of Jaden Harmon, Christian Gass, Jordan Burns is back. We'll see what he looks like. I mean, there's just blue chippers galore in this room, and they maximize this room. Like, William Inge is going to maximize, and is going to be good. Like, I think there's a chance that this defense is better than what we saw a year ago. I think this defense as a whole, like, there's not really any holes. Like, I look around this defense. I can't say there's a hole on this defense. Like, anyone who's still worried about the defense, I don't know. Like, I mean, maybe says Jordan Thomas had such a bad injury last year, then you're kind of wondering what he's gonna be like, and you lose Christian Harrison, who was sharing a lot of snaps with Boo Carter. Like, I don't know who the natural backup star is for Boo, especially if he's playing both ways. Like, that kind of makes you a little anxious if he's gonna be like, he's doing punt returns. He's going to do some slot, and he's going to be playing full-time star. That's a lot of snaps and a lot of opportunity for injury. So I think it's kind of sneaky important that Tennessee really has a safety valve at star behind Boo. Maybe that's Caleb Beasley, Lipscomb, another Lipscomb guy. Maybe that's where he slides up, because it seems like he's the favorite in the room going in the spring, is like he could be the backup star and not a corner for Tennessee. So I don't know. Ethan, let me tell you, don't worry about the linebackers. The linebackers going to be great. And I'm on this all spring and summer. Like, this is the linebacker revolution this summer at Tennessee. And I'm so excited to see Arian, to see Edwin, to see Jaden Harmon, to see Christian Gass. Like, it's going to be a delight. I'm so excited for it.
I will say, I do like the potential. I understand your take. When SEC play is concerned, and you're playing at, I don't know, maybe the second highest level in football right now with the Big Ten, how it is. But I prefer seeing results on the field, and there's a lot of guys in the room. There's a lot of potential in the room. I don't know. That's a little surprising of a take to hear from me, from there not really being anybody proven. That's the one thing that makes
there wasn't anybody in the secondary last year who's proven.
Sure. Yeah. I think that's a fair take. And I think everything you said is fair. I think the potential is absolutely there. I would not be surprised if I'm proven horribly wrong, but that's the one area of the defense that I just don't think is set in stone. We'll see. Hopefully I'm wrong about that.
I think it's definitely not set in stone, good. But I think it's just in good hands. Like, I think it's an iron sharpens iron situation. Like, whoever wins that and whoever gets on the field for Tennessee at linebacker next year, they're going to be good.
I still think, I don't know if it's a whole, but I don't think they're going to be particularly good at safety. But their defense as a whole, I'm not worried about. And safety wouldn't be my answer to this question, because I think they're good enough at other spots on the defense and good enough at corner that it's not the end of the world to me.
So what's your answer here, Ryan?
I mean, receiver. So to me, it's a no-brainer. Like,
That's...
if I can be dramatic for a second, put this on things that I would never say on the Rocky Top Insider Press Pass, but I get in here and Chase is just saying outlandish stuff, and it gets me in the mood to say outlandish stuff. The receiver room's disgusting in this spring. Like, it's essentially Chris Brazell, who was maybe the most disappointing transfer of Josh Heupel's tenure. At least he's up there, in my opinion. In year one, he can obviously prove me wrong in year two. Mike Matthews, who, I think is a solid player, caught 9 passes last year, whatever it was, single digits. And essentially you have effectively 5 freshmen, two guys, redshirt freshmen, and Braylon Staley and Amari Jefferson, and then the 3 guys they brought in. Like, it's just so unproven. In a year you ideally would have a lot of talent around your quarterback, looking to, it showed a lot of promise the back half of the season, and you're looking to make a second-year jump. I'm sure it'll be aggressive in the portal once spring practice is over, but I mean, I think just really everything of how they handled the portal. I'm not even necessarily the guys they lost the portal. I'm not even really upset about how they handled that much, but the way they handled recruiting receivers in the portal during the winter period, I think, was pretty inexcusable.
I mean, I've said this. I've been very adamant. Like, Georgia had the offseason portal with receiver that Tennessee should have had. Like, because Georgia led the country in drops last year. it was a major weakness, and they added 5 blue chippers in the recruiting class, and they retained Nitro Tuggle, 4-star talented dude, and they also went out and got Zachariah Branch and Noah Thomas as like just a cherry on top of like, but they were also adamant, or like Dan Key, like I don't know how Dan Key's not a ball. Like it's one of those where you're just like, I don't think Tennessee needed a home run guy. Like you didn't have to get Carnell Tate or Jeremiah Smith, whatever. Like you didn't have to go big fish hunting. I think you needed some stability. Like you knew Brew was gone. You knew Dante Thornton was gone. Like you knew like those are two, especially Brew being a leader.
It's none of the guys that they lost to the portal that you're like, wow.
No,
none of that. It's
No.
It's the guys. It was the lack of production this year with the guys outside that they lost to the graduation/draft.
Yes, and I think you could tell me if Dante Thornton had one more year of eligibility, I'd be okay. I mean, I would still be anxious, but I'd be like,
yeah,
I feel okay. Where I'm like, then all you really need is one other guy, either Matthews or Staley, to break out, and then you're cooking with something because then you have 2 guys you can count on, and Tennessee's had a really good offense with 2 guys they can count on a receiver. That's doable because I think Mike Matthews has all the talent in the world, but they're now in a spot where they need, like, they have no certainty at receiver. Like, that's the difference. Is like, to your point, Chris Brazzell, they need a great year from him. They need a great year from Matthews and or Staley. There's just no way around it. Like those, you need 2 of 3 to hit, and I think that's just a lot of pressure on a lot of guys who, I don't know. Like everything is offensive related, Ethan, is I think it's unlikely that all 3 don't have a breakout year. I think it's a good bet for one of them to and have one. My guess of the 3 is still Mike, if it was one of the 3 on the outside. But this is such a huge year, and to Ryan's point about like, this is it for Nico, most likely. And this was what you built to. Like it just feels like you did it backwards in terms of getting ready for the prime years of a quarterback. Like early on, like Ethan, you're obviously a big NFL guy too, is like, what do you do with a talented young quarterback? You stock up on all the pieces around him to like make sure it's as easy as possible early on so that they don't need Tyreek Hill later on. And Tennessee and Nico, I think, is going to have less weapons than he did a year ago. He's going to have a more questionable running game than a year ago. He's going to have more questionable receivers than a year ago. Like, it doesn't mean it won't work. It doesn't mean I think it can't work. It just feels like it's less than a 50% proposition right now that the Tennessee wide receivers have a bounce back breakout year. And I don't even think it's the fault of the guys in that room right now. It's just more of how Tennessee, to Ryan's point, handled this offseason, because Dan Key would not have moved the needle, but to know that you're losing Brew and Dante and to have no vets in the room right now is just preposterous. Like, I don't understand how they did not prepare to have this amount of turnover, because you knew Brew and Dante were gone. Like, you knew that was going to be the case. And these were your 2 most important veteran receivers, most productive the last 2 years, and they're gone. And it just, you knew that was coming. And that's why I'm just like a Dan Key or somebody like that. That's all you needed. You needed someone like just stable, reliable on one side to make things easier for these young guys. And I just think there's now just a real unfair amount of pressure on the receivers that are left in this room.
Yeah.
Dan Key would have moved the needle to me. He put up good numbers.
Well, I meant like needle, like I don't even know if he'd do like Dante Thornton. Like, I'm just saying, like, he doesn't have to be like a star or anything like that. Like, that's what I mean. Like, he doesn't have to be a superstar. He doesn't have to be Zachariah Branch or Noah Thomas, like that big game hunting. Like, just a solid B+, A-.
I'd rather had Dan Key than Noah Thomas, to be honest. At least
which is fine. I'm okay with that. But they should have had one.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Agree. Like, my only logical defense of it would be like, all right, you're going to start Mike Matthews and Chris Brazzell. That'd be the only logical defense. Like, all right, you're going in. That's the plan. Well, if that's the plan, you better go out and get somebody really good, a sure fit thing at slot. And I mean, I know they pursued Branch, but didn't obviously get him. And the Singleton guy from Georgia Tech ended up at Auburn, didn't pursue. Like, that would have been the only defense. If they went super, super hard after and landed a slot receiver, I'm not sure I would have agreed with it, but I would have at least like seen the vision and seen the thought process, where currently I do not see. I do not see the vision.
No, I do not. Final thing here. Fall baseball, Reese Chapman 2025 projection here. Ryan Schumpert. I know Ethan, I don't know if you're diving into the baseball takes here. So I figured this might be just a Ryan question for you. What are you most curious about with him in 2025? Because it's a completely different offseason for him in preseason, right? Where last year, I mean, there was a lot of buzz like he was the next star in the Tennessee outfield, and he was going to be he was raking, and he had a really good offseason, and it felt like the hype was high for Reese Chapman going into last year. He was a sneaky favorite to be like a breakout guy. And it's not like he had a rough offseason, or rough season. It was just more inconsistent, that kind of thing. And I think Reese Chapman is... He is in such a great position this year, but I also just have no idea what to expect because of how weird last year was for him. But I do think they really need Reese Chapman to be a really good hitter. Like, they need him to be really solid middle of the order. Like, last year they didn't need Reese Chapman to have the breakout year. This year, Tennessee can't afford Reese Chapman to not be a star, I don't think. What do you think, Ryan?
I agree with that. I mean, I would push back on some of the I don't remember all the expectations being as high for last year as you're making it sound. Like, I think there was thought that he was a good player and was going to be able to compete for playing time and is really talented, but I mean, was clearly behind Dylan Dreiling and Kavaris tiers and expectations, in my opinion, at least my own expectations. He was not on the same plane as those two guys. Everything else you said, I completely agree with. Like, it's his job in right field. It is absolutely his job to lose in right field, and he's going to get all the opportunities to take it and run with it. I think the big word is Rick Barnes' favorite word. It's consistency. That's where, when I'm over there and I watch him in the fall, or a couple times I've been over, I mean, it's perfect. I've watched him twice now, scrimmage in the preseason, or since they got started, 10 days, 2 weeks ago. One day he hit a mammoth home run and looked really good at the plate. And then when I was over there on Sunday night, he went over 3 with 3 strikeouts. It just feels like there's a lot of that, where some days you see the talent, it's really, really good. And other days he just looks really bad out there, or just has some really bad at bats, I should say, more than looks really bad. And I wasn't over there today. It sounded like Reese Chapman had a nice day today. So, like, that's just it's not like he just gets in these massive slumps, and he struggled a bunch in the fall / winter to really discourage me from thinking that he's an everyday starter. I still think he's an everyday starter. I think he's going to have a good season. To me, all of that feels pretty for sure. I feel confident in saying that going into the season. What I'm less confident in is, like, because the ceiling's high, he's so talented, is what are the chances he reaches that ceiling? What are the chances that he's a 15-plus home run guy, and he's a guy that can hit 300, and he's a guy that can carry a lot of weight in the middle of the order for Tennessee? That's the stuff I'm a lot less sure on, just because of the consistency. But I still have to say, again, I think he's going to be in the lineup. I'd be pretty shocked if he's not the starter in right field. I think things would have to go very poorly for him to lose that spot. He's going to be a big part of things for Tennessee this season.
Where do you think he hits on or maybe not even opening day, when SEC play? Where do you think he fits?
Yeah, you listened to the podcast this morning. Help me out. Help me remember what I said on there for consistency. I think I said
sorry.
like 6.
This was early, Ryan. Like, this is on you here.
I think 6. Well, I just think when you look at the large stagger aspect that Tennessee likes to do, I think Keelan in the 2 spot makes a lot of sense, and I think Inslee in the 5 spot makes a lot of sense. Those two things make a ton of sense to me, which would have lefties in the even numbers and righties in the odd numbers, and I think Andrew Fisher's that lefty bat in the middle of the lineup, which to me would have Reese Chapman as that next guy. Maybe in the 6 hole. I think makes a lot of sense.
Also, final quick one. Is Ozuna going to be ready? Like, I completely forgot because it happened late over the weekend. We had the basketball. I forgot to throw that on the show sheet here. I mean, is the expectation Ozuna is going to be cleared and ready to go and be the first baseman here really soon?
The expectation's for him to be cleared for sure, and I think it's his job eventually. I don't know if it's just he's handed the reins on day one and it's just for sure him in that sense. But assuming he does get cleared, which everything I've heard from Tennessee's side, there's not a whole lot of doubt that he will get clear, I guess. Like, they feel like it's inevitable. It's more just a timetable thing. I have a hard time thinking he's not the guy that wins that job. Like, defense isn't necessarily his strength, but when you consider that he's competing with, he's the only he's the only actual true first baseman on the roster. And the hitting, I think, is what it is. To me, that, and the fact that he's a right-handed bat, they're heavy on left-handed bats again. I think it's inevitable, assuming that he does get eligible. He's the starting first baseman for this team when they're playing meaningful games in March, April, May, June.
I love it. Ozuna's going to be a fan favorite, though. The way he rakes and just his style. Like, he's going to rake at LNS. That'll be fun.
Yeah.
Tony Vitello, always recruiting. I love it. Ryan Schumpert, what can the good folks check out from you and the team over at RockyTopInsider.com this week?
Yeah, you had to tease the podcast that Jack and I did. Almost 90 minutes today. Went through the full roster, went through the schedule, talked about a lot of these debates with what the lineup could look like, the pros and cons of different players winning position battles, weekend rotation, did some superlatives at the end. So a ton of stuff on the team, and then it's just a normal week, business as usual, and another top 15 matchup for Tennessee basketball on Wednesday night, and then they head to Oklahoma for what will be their first non-top 25 matchup in 2.5 weeks. And I think it's a losable game, which shows you how hard the SEC is this year. So another week of plenty of challenges for Tennessee basketball, and we'll have you covered over at RockyTopInsider.com.
Absolutely not. Ethan Stone, what about you and the good folks over there at SidedOnSouth.com?
Yeah, I just updated one of our Super Bowl pages. So we're doing a whole bunch of work on that, doing a bunch of work on SEC basketball, as Ryan was alluding to. Obviously, Tennessee's got some good games coming up. Auburn, the rest of the country will have some Big Ten stuff over on Saturday Tradition as well. So be on the lookout for that. And yeah, it's about it. Pretty normal week otherwise.
I love it. Ethan Stone, Ryan Schumpert, always a pleasure. And the Vols will win it. Norman.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.